Have you ever wondered what happens when the very foundation a society has built its illusions on for half a century suddenly cracks and begins to crumble right before everyone's eyes? What if I told you that right now, in real time, millions of women are waking up to a harsh reality they spent decades denying? A reality where the men they took for granted, the men they belittled, the men they replaced with government handouts and corporate ladders have simply decided they've had enough and walked away, leaving behind a void that no amount of empowerment slogans can fill. Stick with me until the very end of this video, because by the time we're done, you're going to see exactly why this quiet exodus of men isn't just a trend. It's the reckoning that's been 50 years in the making, and the fallout is only just beginning. If you're getting value from this kind of no holds barred breakdown, do me a solid. Yes, smash that like button, share this video with every man you know who needs to hear this truth, and hit subscribe if you want more raw, unfiltered, angry guy content coming straight to your feed. And listen, if you're serious about taking control of your financial future in a world that's collapsing around us, go check out Angry's Crypto Academy right now. That's where I teach you step by step how to properly buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, protect your crypto assets so you can build real wealth that no government, no ex wife, and no collapsing system can take from you. The link to the academy is in the description below. Pause this video if you have to and go click it right now, because knowledge is the only power they can't strip away from you. Let me paint a picture for you, because this isn't just some abstract theory. This is happening in cities, towns, workplaces, dating apps, and family courts all across the Western world as we speak. For the last 50 plus years, society has done something absolutely unprecedented in human history. We took one half of the population, women, and we placed them on a pedestal so high that they started believing the pedestal was the natural order of things. We told them they were queens simply for existing. We gave them special privileges disguised as equality. We rewrote laws to favor them in divorce, in custody battles, in hiring, in education, in everything. We celebrated their worst impulses while shaming men's natural instincts. We turned being a woman into a celebrity status where all you had to do was show up and the world would bend over backward to accommodate you. And what did men get in return? They got called toxic for having boundaries. They got called insecure for wanting a partner who takes care of herself. They got called controlling for expecting loyalty. They got dragged through family courts that treat them like walking ATMs. They got accused of every ism under the sun just for expecting basic respect. They got replaced at work by diversity quotas. They got told their natural masculinity was the problem with the world. And for decades, most men just took it. They kept showing up, they kept providing, they kept protecting, they kept building, they kept paying the vast majority of taxes that funded the very system that was oppressing them. They kept marrying women who were already checking out of the relationship before the ink dried on the marriage certificate. They kept sacrificing, but something has changed. Something fundamental has shifted in the last decade, and especially in the last few years. Men stopped arguing. Men stopped trying to fix women who didn't want to be fixed. Men stopped caping for women who hated them. Men looked around at the burning dumpster fire that Western dating and marriage had become, and instead of trying to put out the fire with their bare hands like they always had, they simply turned around and walked away. Not in anger, though the anger was justified, but in cold, calculated indifference. And that indifference, my friends, has proven to be more devastating to women's confidence than any argument ever could have been. Think about that for a second. Women spent years perfecting the art of ignoring good men, of friend zoning decent guys while chasing the top 5% who wouldn't commit. They spent years bragging about being independent, about not needing a man, about how they could do everything a man can do, but backward and in heels. They spent years weaponizing therapy speak to avoid accountability. I'm healing. I'm working on myself. You just can't handle a strong woman. They spent years getting government to replace husbands, welfare checks instead of wedding rings, child support enforcement instead of fathers sticking around. And through all of this, men were still there in the background, still simping, still white knighting, still hoping that if they just tried harder, if they just made more money, if they just became the perfect beta provider, maybe she'd finally appreciate them. But then something beautiful happened. Men started waking up, one by one at first, then in waves, then in what we're seeing now, a mass exodus. Men started discovering the red pill. They started finding communities online where other men were saying the quiet part out loud. They started realizing that marriage in its current form is the worst investment a man can make. They started understanding that giving commitment to a woman who has 30 bodies and an attitude is like giving your life savings to a crack addict and expecting them to invest it wisely. They started going their own way. They started building their bodies, their bank accounts, their brotherhoods, and their boundaries. And women noticed. Oh, did they notice? At first, they laughed. Good riddance to those losers, they said. Who needs men anyway? But then something started happening that they never anticipated. The attention dried up, the orbiters disappeared. The dating apps that used to be flooded with thirsty guys sending hey beautiful messages 24/7 suddenly went quiet. The good men, the stable, providing, protecting men, weren't just rejecting the boss babes and the single mothers and the entitled princesses. They were rejecting the entire game. They were leaving the country. They were going passport, bro. They were moving to places where women still acted like women, where femininity is celebrated instead of criminalized, where women compete to be chosen instead of expecting to be worshipped, where fit, friendly, cooperative women outnumber entitled Karens by the millions. And now Western women are watching this happen in real time. And their confidence, the fake, unearned confidence that was built entirely on male attention and government privilege, is absolutely crumbling. They're making TikTok videos crying about where all the good men went. They're writing articles asking why men don't approach anymore. They're going on podcasts admitting that maybe, just maybe, feminism sold them a bill of goods. They're watching men in Thailand, Colombia, Philippines, Eastern Europe living like kings surrounded by beautiful feminine women who actually want to build something with them. While back home, these women are fighting over the bottom 20% of men who couldn't get a date in a women's prison with a fistful of pardons. This isn't about hating women. This is about consequences. This is about the natural result of treating half the population like disposable utilities for 50 years and being shocked when they finally opt out. Women confuse special privileges with actual power. They thought that having the government force men to pay them after divorce was power. They thought that having HR departments terrified of their tears was power. They thought that being able to ruin a man's life with a false accusation was power. But real power comes from being needed. Real power comes from having people who voluntarily want to protect you, provide for you, build with you. Real power comes from family, from community, from men who choose you not because a court order forces them to, but because they genuinely want to. And women traded all of that away. They traded stable families for welfare checks. They traded devoted husbands for situationships. They traded respect for likes on Instagram. They traded being cherished for being feared. They traded building civilizations for smashing the patriarchy. And now the bill has come due and they can't pay it. The state can't love you. The government can't hold you at night. Your corporate job can't give you a family. Your body count can't keep you warm when you're 50 and alone with cats. Your master's degree in gender studies doesn't change the biological reality that your fertility window is closing while you're finding yourself. Men have figured this out. Men are done negotiating with reality. Men are done trying to convince women to act right. Men are done participating in a rigged game. When women create chaos now, men don't engage. They don't argue. They don't try to fix it. They just look at the chaos, nod, and walk away. And that calm, indifferent walking away is more terrifying to women than any yelling ever was because it signals something irreversible. The realization that men never actually needed women as much as women needed men. Men can rebuild civilization from scratch. Men have done it before. Men are doing it right now in gyms, in crypto, in businesses, in brotherhoods, in foreign countries where they're treated like human beings instead of utilities. Women are watching men avoid them in public now. Men don't approach anymore. Men don't hold doors if it's going to be met with suspicion. Men don't offer help if it's going to be seen as mansplaining. Men don't engage in debates online because why waste energy on people who hate you? Men have gone ghost. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. And the silence is deafening. The absence is devastating because when the providers and protectors check out, what exactly is left? A society of consumers with no producers, a civilization of takers with no givers, a culture that eats its seed corn and wonders why nothing grows. As the late, great Kevin Samuels used to say so perfectly, ladies, winter has arrived. That hot girl summer you spent partying, traveling, living your best life while treating good men like dirt, it's over. The music has stopped and there aren't enough chairs. The men who would have moved mountains for you 10 years ago are now moving to mountains, literally building lives in places where women still understand that relationships are about cooperation, not domination. The men who would have accepted you at 35 with 3 kids from 3 different fathers are now 35 themselves, in peak earning years, dating 25-year-old women who treat them like kings. This is the reality that's shattering women's confidence. Not because men are being mean. We're not. We're being indifferent. And indifference from the sex that builds everything, protects everything, and maintains everything is the most devastating response possible. Women spent years thinking they held all the cards in dating and relationships. They thought sexual access was the ultimate power. But men have discovered that peace of mind is worth far more than any amount of sex, especially the conditional transactional kind that's offered in the West now. Women are realizing slowly and painfully that the man is the prize, always has been. The man is the one with the power to commit or walk away, the power to build or let burn, the power to protect or stand by while everything collapses. Women can be wonderful helpers, partners, nurturers, supporters, but leaders of society, builders of civilization, gatekeepers of commitment and reach resources, that's never been their role. And pretending otherwise has led us exactly where we are now. And the coping is glorious to watch. The mental gymnastics are Olympic gold medal level. These men going overseas are just sex tourists. No, they're men who want families with women who actually want families. These men are broke losers who can't get women here. No, many are 6-figure earners who simply refuse to play a losing game. Walking away is passive aggressive. No, walking away is the ultimate expression of self respect. Men need women more than women need men. Then why are women the ones making all the content crying about being alone? The truth is simple and brutal. Women need men far more than men need women in the modern context. Men have always been the disposable sex, sent to war, sent to die in mines, sent to build the infrastructure that women consume. But now that men have the option to opt out entirely, now that technology and globalization have given men choices their grandfathers never had, the whole house of cards is collapsing, and this is only the beginning. Wait until the economic reality really hits. Wait until the welfare state that replaced husbands starts running out of other people's money. Wait until the corporate jobs that replaced families start getting automated away. Wait until the dating apps are nothing but bots and OnlyFans girls. Wait until these women hit the wall at 40 and realize that all the empowerment in the world doesn't stop biology. Men walking away have done more to reset gender dynamics than any amount of arguing ever could have. By simply refusing to participate in their own destruction, men have exposed the entire illusion for what it was. And women are left holding the bag, watching their perceived power evaporate like morning mist when the sun comes up. And now we're watching the panic set in, slow at first, like a leak in a dam that nobody wants to admit is there, but it's growing every single day. Women who spent their 20s and early 30s stacking degrees, stacking bodies, stacking follower counts, and stacking excuses are suddenly looking up and realizing the party is over and the cleanup crew is nowhere to be found. Because the cleanup crew used to be men, the bill payers, the fixers, the providers, the protectors. They were the ones who always showed up after the chaos to put things back together. But those men have clocked out. They're not coming. And for the first time in 50 years, women are having to sit in the wreckage they helped create and actually feel the weight of it. You can see it in the comment sections of every Red Pill channel, every Passport Bro vlog, every quiet MG Tao monk mode post. The same women who used to type LOL enjoy your hand 5 years ago are now typing 8 paragraph essays about how not all women are like that and I'm traditional. Where are the good men? The mask is off. The delusion is cracking. They're bargaining, they're pleading, they're threatening, they're shaming. Every stage of grief on full public display because they finally understand that the one resource they can't fake, can't force, can't legislate, and can't shame into existence is male commitment. And male commitment has left the building. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates where we are right now. I know a guy, let's call him Marcus, solid dude, 6'2", software engineer, pulling low six figures before he was 30, in the gym 5 days a week, no kids, no debt, passport full of stamps. 5 years ago, Marcus was engaged to a woman who made maybe 60 grand a year, had a master's degree she never used, and spent her weekends getting blackout drunk with her girlfriends while posting "My man is my best friend" captions on Instagram. She cheated twice that he knows of, and when he found out, she gave him the classic script: "You're controlling, you're insecure. I felt trapped. I needed to find myself." The wedding was off, the ring was returned, and she immediately jumped on social media with the "I'm healing, I'm glowing, I'm choosing me" posts. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't fight for her. He didn't beg. He just blocked her everywhere, moved cities, doubled his income, and started traveling Southeast Asia every quarter. Fast forward to last month. Marcus is in Bali dating a 26-year-old Indonesian girl who cooks for him, massages his back when he's tired, speaks to him with respect, and looks at him like he hung the moon. She's fit, feminine, zero body count drama, wants 4 kids and a garden. Meanwhile, his ex is 34 now, gained 40 pounds, still single, still posting boss babe content to an audience that's shrinking by the day. And last week, she unblocked him on Instagram just to send him a message that said, "I hope you're happy knowing you abandoned a good woman." That, gentlemen, is the sound of a shattered ego trying to rebuild itself with the only tool it has left: blame. Multiply Marcus's story by hundreds of thousands. That's what's happening right now. The men who were once willing to overlook red flags the size of football fields are now the same men who won't even swipe right on a woman over 30 with a Snapchat dog filter and a mom first bio. The men who used to accept "I'm just focusing on my career right now" as an excuse are now the men who hear that sentence and immediately book a flight to Medellin. The men who used to think "she'll change after marriage" are now the men who laugh at the idea of marriage entirely. And every single day, another man wakes up, sees stories like Marcus's, reads the statistics on divorce theft, watches one more video of a woman screaming at a calm man in public, and quietly makes the decision: "I'm out. This isn't revenge. This is evolution in real time. Men are adapting to the environment women and the state created. When the risks of dealing with Western women became higher than the rewards, men did what men have always done. They found a new path. They always will. You can't shame a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain by walking away. You can't negotiate with a man who has seen the contract and realized it's written entirely in disappearing ink. You can't guilt a man who understands that his peace is worth more than your chaos. And the funniest part, the part that keeps me up at night laughing, is that women still don't get it. They think if they just make enough TikToks complaining about low value men or men who can't handle a strong woman, somehow the good men will come running back. They think if they call us cowards, sex tourists, losers, incels, predators, whatever the slur of the week is, that we'll feel bad and return to the plantation. They're like children who broke their favorite toy and are now screaming at the toy for being broken instead of looking in the mirror. I want you to really let this next part sink in because it's the core truth that 99% of people are still too afraid to say out loud. Women never had the power they thought they had. Never. What they had was borrowed power, power that was loaned to them by men who still believed in the social contract, power that existed only as long as men continued to enforce it voluntarily. The laws favoring women in divorce court, written and enforced overwhelmingly by male legislators and male judges. The affirmative action that got them into colleges and jobs, created and maintained by men. The welfare state that replaced husbands, paid for by male taxpayers at a ratio of about 3 to 1. The chivalry that kept them safe on the streets, provided by men who were raised to see women as something to protect. All of it was on loan. All of it was contingent on men continuing to play the role of disposable protector and provider. And the second men realized the deal was garbage. The second men realized they could get everything they wanted: peace, respect, love, sex, family, legacy, somewhere else or by themselves. The loan was called in. And women are discovering in real time that when you remove male cooperation from society, you don't get a matriarchy, you get collapse. Look at any major city right now. Look at the birth rates in Seoul, in Tokyo, in London, in New York, all collapsing. Look at the number of women on antidepressants skyrocketing. Look at the explosion of lonely single women content online. It's not a genre anymore. It's the entire platform. Look at the way women are now competing for the bottom tier of men. Men they would have laughed at 5 years ago because the top tier has checked out entirely. Look at the Passport Bros channels blowing up while the strong independent woman channels quietly fade into irrelevance. This is what happens when you tell half the population they're disposable and then act shocked when they take you at your word. Let me break down exactly how this confidence collapse is playing out in phases because it's happening in such a predictable pattern now that you can literally set your watch to it. Phase one was denial. That lasted most of the 2010s. Who needs men? I have my career, my girls, my wine, my vibrator. Phase two was anger. That's where a lot of the man hating content came from. All men are trash. All men are predators. Men are obsolete. Phase three was bargaining. This is where we are right now in 2025. Okay, maybe traditional gender roles weren't so bad. Maybe I don't want to be the boss all the time. Maybe I'll settle down, eventually. Phase four is going to be depression. We're already seeing the early stages with the explosion of where have all the good men gone content. And phase five, acceptance. That's when the real change will happen. When enough women finally admit out loud that the experiment failed, that feminism sold them a fantasy that can't survive contact with reality. But here's the brutal part. By the time most women reach acceptance, the men they want will be gone permanently. The high value men who walked away in their 20s and 30s will be in their 40s and 50s, married to younger women who never bought into the delusion in the first place, raising families in countries that still value masculinity. The men who stayed single will have built such fulfilling lives, wealth, brotherhoods, purpose, peace, that going back to the dysfunction of Western dating will feel like volunteering to go back to prison after tasting freedom. Like, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a 35-year-old woman who spent her 20s living her best life, traveling, hooking up, climbing the corporate ladder, collecting handbags and trauma. She hits 33, decides she's ready to settle down. She gets on the apps. Her matches are either married men looking for side pieces, broke dudes who live in their mom's basement, or the occasional decent guy who ghosts her after discovering her body count or her attitude. She starts making TikToks about how dating is impossible, how men are intimidated by her success. She tells herself she's a prize. She tells her friends she's a prize. But every night when she's alone, the truth creeps in. She's not a prize, she's a cautionary tale. Now imagine the man she rejected at 26 because he wasn't exciting enough. That man is now 40, shredded, financially free, married to a 28-year-old woman who worships the ground he walks on, with 2 kids and another on the way. He doesn't even remember her name. That's the asymmetry we're dealing with now. The consequences for women are permanent and generational. The consequences for men who walked away early, they're living their best lives, while the women who rejected them watch from the sidelines, wondering where it all went wrong. This is why the shaming language no longer works. Call us losers all you want. We're losers with peace of mind, 6-pack abs, and a beautiful woman who cooks dinner without being asked. Call us sex tourists. We're tourists who found paradise and decided to stay. Call us avoidant. We're avoiding bullets and calling it wisdom. The insults don't land because the men hearing them have already won. They're not arguing from a place of hurt anymore. They're speaking from a place of abundance, and abundance makes you bulletproof. Women are slowly realizing that all the power they thought they had, sexual power, social power, legal power, was temporary and conditional. Sexual power was only as long as you're young and hot. And even then, it only works on men who don't have options. Social power disappears the moment people stop caring about your feelings. Legal power only exists as long as there are men willing to enforce the laws. Strip away male cooperation, and what are you left with? A bunch of aging women with cats and credit card debt, wondering why nobody wants to build with them anymore. The late, great Kevin Samuels used to ask women a simple question: what do you bring to the table? And for years, they laughed at the question. They thought the table was theirs by default. They thought they were the table. Now they're finding out that men were always the table, the structure, the foundation, the thing everything else rests on. And when men remove the table, all that's left is a bunch of empty plates on the floor. We're watching the greatest transfer of power in modern history. And it's not happening through violence or revolution. It's happening through quiet indifference, one man at a time deciding he's done. One man at a time, choosing peace over chaos. One man at a time, building a life that doesn't require jumping through hoops for people who hate him. And the cumulative effect of millions of men making that same decision is the complete unraveling of everything women were told would make them happy. Hot girl summer is officially canceled. Broke girl winter is here to stay. And here's where it gets even darker for them, because the collapse isn't just personal, it's civilizational. We're not just watching individual women hit the wall one by one. We're watching entire societies that bet everything on the idea that you could remove male incentive, male cooperation, and male sacrifice and still have a functioning civilization. And the answer is coming in loud and clear. You can't. You simply cannot. Look at the birth rates. I'm not throwing numbers at you to bore you. I'm throwing them at you because they are the final report card on 50 years of feminist social engineering. South Korea, the most educated female population on planet Earth, women with master's degrees coming out their ears, women who were told they could have it all. Fertility rate 0.72. That's not a birth rate, that's a death spiral. Japan, same story, 1.26 and falling. Italy, Spain, Germany, Canada, the UK, all under 1.5 now. The United States is hovering right around 1.6, and that's only because immigrants and religious communities are keeping it from flatlining completely. The native Western population is already in free fall. What does that mean in plain English? It means in 20 to 30 years, there won't be enough young workers to pay for the pensions and health care of all these independent, childless cat ladies who spent their fertile years climbing corporate ladders and riding the carousel. It means the welfare state that replaced husbands is about to go bankrupt because there aren't enough men in the pipeline paying taxes anymore. It means schools are closing by the thousands because there are no kids to fill them. It means entire neighborhoods are turning into ghost towns filled with nothing but aging single women and the delivery drivers who bring them wine and vibrators. And the best part, the women who did this still have the audacity to blame men. They'll sit there with their boxed wine and their antidepressants and say men just don't want to grow up. Men are the problem. No, sweetheart. Men grew up. Men looked at the deal you were offering, Marriage 2.0, where they get financial ruin, false accusations, and a 50% plus chance of losing their kids. And they said, hard pass. Men looked at dating you and realized the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Men looked at fatherhood in a system that treats fathers like optional accessories and said, I'll raise my kids somewhere that actually values fathers. That's not immaturity. That's the most mature decision a man can make. Let me tell you another story. I was in Bogota last year, sitting in a little cafe in Zona T, and I watched this play out in real time. There was a table of four American women in their mid 30s, clearly on one of those girls' trip, we don't need no man vacations. Designer bags, fresh filler, the whole package. They were loud, taking selfies, talking about how Colombian men were so much more romantic than American guys. 10 minutes later, a group of local Colombian women walked in, early 20s, dresses, heels, long hair, laughing softly, feminine energy radiating off them. Every man in that cafe turned his head. Not one of those American women got a second glance for the rest of the hour. You could literally feel the energy shift in the room. The American women noticed. You could see it on their faces, that moment of realization that the rules they were used to at home didn't apply here. They weren't the prize here. They were just loud tourists who were about to go home to empty apartments and dating apps full of ghosts. That's the new reality. In the West, women are finding out they have to compete for male attention again, and they have no idea how to do it because they never had to learn. They spent their prime years being chased, being worshiped, being told they were perfect exactly as they were. Now the chase is over, and they're the ones doing the chasing, and they're competing against women who actually bring peace, beauty, femininity, and respect to the table, and they're losing badly. I want you to understand something that almost nobody is willing to say plainly. The sexual marketplace has globalized, but women's delusions did not. Men now have options that cross borders, cultures, and economies. A man making 80 grand a year in Ohio is a king in Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, or Latin America. He can date women who are younger, fitter, kinder, and more eager to please than anything he could pull back home without a seven-figure net worth. And he doesn't have to worry about being divorced, raped, false accused, or treated like a walking wallet. That genie is never going back in the bottle. The internet showed men the truth. Cheap flights made it accessible, and crypto made it financially unstoppable. Women are now in direct competition with the entire planet, and most of them are showing up to a beauty pageant wearing sweatpants and an attitude. They're finding out the hard way that strong and independent doesn't make a man's heart race, that boss babe energy doesn't make a man want to build a family, that I don't need no man doesn't keep you warm at night when you're 45 and your eggs are expired. And the coping mechanisms are evolving in real time. First, it was those men are losers who can't get women here. Then it became those men are predators exploiting poor women. Now it's those foreign women are just using them for money and a green card. Every stage is another layer of denial because the alternative, looking in the mirror and admitting they priced themselves out of the market with their own behavior, is too painful. But the market doesn't care about your feelings. The market doesn't care about your master's degree or your corporate title or your body positive Instagram posts. The market cares about what you bring to a man's life versus what you take. And right now, millions of Western women bring chaos, entitlement, baggage, and demands, and they take resources, peace, and sanity. The math is brutal, and men have finally learned how to do it. Let me read you something I saw on TikTok last week that perfectly sums up where women's heads are at right now. A woman, 37, reasonably attractive, no kids, posted a video crying actual tears, saying, I did everything right. I got the degree. I built the career. I went to therapy. I healed my trauma. I'm in the gym. Why can't I find a good man who wants to commit? And the comments were savage. Thousands of men just wrote, Kevin Samuels tried to tell you, and you were the good man's placeholder while he leveled up. She turned the comments off within an hour. That's the sound of a paradigm shattering. Women spent years being told their value was infinite and eternal. Now they're finding out their value has an expiration date, just like men's always did. Men have always had to bring something tangible to the table: money, protection, status, provision, leadership. Women were told they didn't have to bring anything but their presence. Now the presence isn't enough anymore, and they have nothing else developed. No wonder the panic is setting in. We're watching the death of female solipsism in real time. The belief that the world revolves around women's feelings, that men exist to serve women's needs, that female happiness is the ultimate metric of a healthy society, all of it is dying. And it's dying because men stopped feeding it. Men stopped arguing. Men stopped caretaking. Men stopped simping. Men stopped sacrificing for women who wouldn't sacrifice a Tuesday night for them. And that's the silence is deafening. Women are now experiencing what men experienced for decades: invisibility. Men know what it feels like to be invisible unless you're in the top 10%. Now, women are getting their first taste of it, and they don't like it one bit. They're making video after video. Why don't men approach anymore? Why don't men flirt? Why is dating so hard? Because men finally realized approaching you in 2025 is Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. One wrong word, and you're fired, canceled, accused, or jailed. So men don't approach, men don't flirt. Men keep their eyes forward, headphones in, and keep walking. And every time a woman experiences that cold indifference, a tiny piece of her old worldview dies. This is the great rebalancing. This is nature correcting itself after 50 years of artificial distortion. You cannot suppress male nature forever. You cannot tax, shame, and punish men into serving a system that hates them and expect them to keep showing up with a smile. Eventually, they stop showing up at all. And when enough men stop showing up, the whole system comes crashing down. And we're already seeing the early stages of the crash. Police forces can't recruit men anymore because why risk your life for a society that calls you a toxic patriarch? The military is missing recruitment goals by tens of thousands because why die in a desert for a country that teaches your son he's inherently evil? Trades are desperate for workers because why break your body 40 hours a week when you can make the same money online and spend your afternoons at the gym or on a beach in Thailand? Everything women were told would make them happy: career, independence, sexual liberation, government as husband is turning to ash in their mouths. And everything they were told was oppressive: marriage, family, femininity, submission to a worthy man is now the very thing they're desperately trying to claw back. But the men who would have given them that life a decade ago have moved on. They've built new lives. They've found new women. They've discovered that peace is priceless. And the window is closing. Actually, for most of them, the window is already closed. They just haven't accepted it yet. We're heading into an era where high value men will have their pick of traditional feminine cooperative women from every corner of the globe, and the women who bought into the feminist fantasy will be left fighting over the scraps, the bottom 20% of men who never had any leverage to begin with. The irony is delicious. The women who spent years saying, I only date men 6 feet and above making six figures, are now the ones settling for 5 foot sick unemployed gamers who live in their mom's basement because that's all that's left after the good men checked out. This is what collapse looks like. Not tanks in the streets, not bread lines. Collapse in the modern West looks like empty playgrounds, shuttered schools, lonely women in their 40s with frozen eggs and frozen hearts, wondering where all the good men went while the good men are on another continent, raising families with women who never forgot how to be women. Winter isn't coming, winter is here, and it's going to be a very, very long one. The most fascinating part of this whole collapse is how predictable it all was, and yet how completely blindsided the people who engineered it have been. Go back and read the feminist literature from the 1960s and 1970s. Read Shulamith Firestone, read Kate Millett, read the Scum Manifesto, read the early Now Position papers. They literally said out loud in writing that the goal was to destroy the nuclear family, to make marriage obsolete, to transfer dependency from husbands to the state, to free women from what they called biological tyranny. They said the end game was a world where women would no longer need men for anything. Not money, not protection, not children, because of the sperm banks and eventually artificial wombs. Not even emotional support, because sisterhood is powerful. They told us exactly what they were going to do, and men just let it happen. Men thought it was a negotiation. Men thought if they just worked harder, earned more, became more sensitive, more supportive, more in touch with their feminine side, women would eventually calm down and things would go back to normal. That was the greatest miscalculation in human history. Women weren't asking for equality, they were declaring war, and men showed up with flowers. Fast forward 50 years, and the plan worked better than even the most radical feminists could have dreamed. Marriage rates have collapsed to historic lows. Over 40% of children are born out of wedlock. The majority of college graduates are women. Women initiate 80% of divorces. Female happiness has been in free fall since the early 1970s, according to every longitudinal study we have. The very same women who were promised liberation are now the most medicated, indebted, and lonely demographic in the Western world. And now, the architects of this disaster are standing in the ruins, looking around like confused children, asking, why aren't men fixing this? Because we tried to fix it for decades and you called us oppressors for it. We tried to tell you that trading family for career would leave you empty and you called us misogynists. We tried to warn you that weaponizing the state against men would eventually backfire and you called us fragile male egos. We tried to protect the very institutions that kept civilization running and you called them patriarchal chains. So we stopped trying. That's the part women still can't wrap their heads around. Men didn't lose the gender war. Men surrendered. Men looked at the battlefield, looked at the rules of engagement, looked at the casualties on our side and said, you know what? Keep it. We're going home. And home now is anywhere but here. I want you to really visualize what the next 10 to 15 years are going to look like because we're already seeing the previews and they're brutal. Picture every major Western city in 2035. The housing market has partially collapsed because there are no longer enough young families buying 3-bedroom houses. Entire suburbs built in the 1950s and 1960s are half empty, filled with aging single women who bought at the peak with their corporate salaries and now can't sell because there's no one to sell to. The schools that haven't closed yet are running at 30% capacity. Local governments are bankrupt because the tax base is gone. No young working men paying into the system. Just a massive cohort of post-wall women retiring on pensions that were never funded properly because the demographic pyramid inverted. The dating market is a wasteland. The average woman between 35 and 50 has maybe 3 to 5 viable options within a 100-mile radius. And those options are men who either never leveled up or who have been burned so badly they're only looking for casual sex. The few high value men who stayed in the West are locked down with younger women who figured out the game early and opted out of the feminist programming. The rest, they're overseas or they're happily single or they're in monk mode compounds, lifting weights and stacking crypto, completely checked out from the sexual marketplace. Women's social media feeds become graveyards of quiet desperation. Instead of brunch pics and living my best life posts, it's endless content about manifesting my divine masculine and healing my inner child, and why I froze my eggs at 38, and you should too. The wine aunts are no longer a meme, they're the majority. The cat rescues are overflowing. Therapy is a multi-trillion-dollar industry because the one thing these women can still consume is validation from other women who are just as miserable. And the state, the glorious state that was supposed to replace husbands, it's broke. Completely, catastrophically broke. Because the men who used to pay 80% of the taxes either left the country, went underground economically, or simply never earned enough to be taxed heavily because they stopped participating in the rat race. The same government that funded women's independence with male labor is now telling 60-year-old women they have to work until 70 because Social Security is insolvent. This is what fourth wave feminism built: a civilization of lonely, broke, aging women surrounded by luxury goods they can't take with them and memories of a youth spent chasing validation that no longer exists. Meanwhile, in places like Colombia, Thailand, the Philippines, Poland, Hungary, and increasingly even parts of Africa and the Middle East, Western men are building entirely new societies. They're marrying younger feminine women who never swallowed the poison. They're having three, four, five kids. They're starting businesses, homesteads, digital nomad communities, expat enclaves where masculinity is celebrated instead of pathologized. They're teaching their sons how to be men and their daughters how to be women, completely outside the reach of Western family courts and HR departments. These men aren't hiding, they're posting it all online. They're showing the weddings, the pregnancies, the family dinners, the businesses, the freedom. And every single post is a dagger in the heart of the Western woman watching from her downtown studio apartment with her rescue cat and her third glass of Pinot, because she knows deep down that could have been her life. That was supposed to be her life. She was sold a lie that told her she could wait until 38 to settle, that her value wouldn't depreciate, that men would always be waiting with open arms and open wallets no matter how she treated them. And now she's watching the men who would have given her that life build it with someone else, someone who didn't make them wait, someone who didn't make them beg, someone who didn't treat commitment like a consolation prize. The psychological fallout from this is going to be biblical. We're already seeing the early stages. Women in their late 30s and 40s deleting their social media because they can't handle seeing happy families anymore. Women quitting dating apps because every swipe right is a reminder of what they lost. Women going full tradcon overnight, putting on sundresses and baking banana bread and quoting Bible verses they never believed in, desperately trying to signal submission to men who no longer trust the signal. Because that's the final red pill for women. Men don't believe you anymore. Men don't trust your sudden traditional phase. Men see the sundress and the I want to be a homemaker bio and immediately think, how many miles are on this thing and why is she trying to sell it now? The trust is gone. The benefit of the doubt is gone. The willingness to invest years into a woman becoming who she was meant to be is gone. Men learn the hard way that women's promises are written in water. I want you to think about the sheer scale of the regret that's coming. Millions of women who were told they were queens, who were told the world revolved around them, who were told they could do whatever they wanted with no consequences, are about to spend the second half of their lives drowning in the most profound regret humanity has ever witnessed. Regret for the good men they discarded, regret for the children they never had, regret for the families they destroyed, regret for believing the lie that independence was better than interdependence. And the worst part, there will be no one to blame but themselves and the ideologues who sold them the fantasy. But those ideologues will be long gone, retired on cushy university pensions, or dead, leaving behind a generation of women holding the bag for a revolution that ate its own children. This is why men walking away is the most moral thing we've ever done. Not because we hate women, most of us don't, but because we finally love ourselves enough to stop participating in our own destruction. We stopped feeding the beast that was devouring us. We stopped lighting ourselves on fire to keep ungrateful people warm. We stopped arguing with people who hated us and started building lives that make us happy. And in doing so, we forced the entire system to reveal itself for what it always was, a parasitic structure that only functioned as long as men were willing to be exploited. Remove the exploited, and the parasite dies. The West is going to learn the hard way that you cannot have a first world society without male cooperation. And you cannot have male cooperation when you treat men like the enemy. Every empire that forgot this lesson collapsed. Rome, Athens, you name it. They all reached a point where men looked at what was being asked of them: die in wars, pay taxes, build infrastructure, protect women and children, all for the privilege of being told they were the root of all evil. And those men said, nah, we're good. We're just the first generation with airplanes and crypto that allow us to actually leave and build something better elsewhere. So when women ask, where have all the good men gone? The answer is simple. We went where we're wanted. We went where masculinity is a virtue, not a disease. We went where family is the point of life, not an inconvenience. We went where peace is possible, and we're never coming back. And the experiment is over. The results are in. Feminism failed. The sexual revolution failed. The have it all lie failed. And the only people still pretending otherwise are the ones who haven't hit the wall yet, or the ones who already hit it and are coping with boxed wine and antidepressants. Winter has arrived, ladies, and this one's going to last a very, very long time. And let me take you even deeper into what this actually looks like on the ground in 2025, because we're not talking about some distant dystopia anymore. We're living in it right now, today, November 19th, 2025, and the cracks are turning into canyons faster than anyone wants to admit. I want you to picture the average corporate office in any major American or European city this very morning. Walk through the open plan floor of any Fortune 500 company, any government agency, any university, admin building. What do you see? Row after row of women in their late 20s to early 50s, many of them single, many childless, many on SSRIs, sitting in meetings where they spend 2 hours debating the correct gender neutral terminology for firemen, while the actual building maintenance is done by a 60-year-old contractor who's the only male within a 5 mile radius who still shows up. The men who used to fill those middle management roles, the men who used to stay late to fix the servers, the men who used to mentor the juniors, they're gone. Quietly retired at 45 with a paid off house and a stack of crypto, or working remotely from Medellin 4 hours a day for twice the money, or simply never entered the corporate world in the first place because they saw what happened to their fathers. The few men left in those offices are either gay, married with ironclad prenups, or so checked out that they do the absolute bare minimum and spend the rest of their day trading meme coins in the bathroom. They're not mentoring anyone. They're not staying late. They're not taking on extra projects. They're not risking their reputations by giving honest feedback to a female colleague because one wrong word can end their career. They're clocking in, keeping their heads down, and clocking out. The office is functionally a giant daycare for adult women who still believe leaning in is going to pay off any day now. Now, zoom out to the dating scene in any major Western city on a Friday night. The bars and clubs that used to be packed with 25 to 35-year-old men chasing women are half empty. The men who do show up are either the bottom tier guys who never had options anyway, or high value guys who are only there to pick up the low hanging fruit and leave before last call. The ratio is no longer 6 men to every woman, it's flipped. You walk into a trendy spot in Manhattan, Miami, London, Sydney, and it's wall to wall women in their 30s dressed like they're still 22, taking selfies, wondering why nobody is approaching them. The DJ is playing the same playlist he played in 2015, but the energy is dead because the masculine polarity that made those places electric is simply gone. The women stand around for 3 hours nursing one overpriced cocktail, waiting for the approach that never comes, then go home and make a TikTok about how all men are cowards now. They don't understand that men didn't become cowards. Men became mathematicians. Men ran the numbers on getting accused of harassment for saying, "You look nice tonight," and decided the risk reward ratio is dog shit. Men looked at the sea of angry, entitled faces and decided they'd rather go home and play Call of Duty with the boys or hop on a flight to a country where smiling at a woman doesn't require a legal consultation first. And the universities? Good Lord. The universities are ground zero for the collapse. Walk onto any major campus in 2025, and it's a 60-40 or even 65-35 female to male ratio in most programs. The men who are still there are either in STEM grinding for that high earning ticket out, or they're the soft social science guys who learned early that agreeing with everything a woman says is the path of least resistance. The engineering buildings still have men. The gender studies buildings are 95% women circle jerking about how the patriarchy is keeping men out of gender studies, completely oblivious to the fact that men looked at the curriculum, looked at the job prospects, looked at the misandry baked into every syllabus and said, "Yeah, I'll pass." The male dropout rate from higher education is now so extreme that governments are quietly panicking behind closed doors. They're offering scholarships exclusively to men, lowering admission standards for men, creating men's outreach programs that would have been called sexist if they were for women 10 years ago. Because without men paying the majority of the taxes that fund these universities, the whole system collapses. Without men in the high paying STEM jobs that subsidize the grievance studies departments, the whole house of cards comes down. They need men back in the system. But they spent 50 years teaching men that the system hates them, and now men are returning the favor. Even the military is a ghost of what it used to be. The US Army missed its recruitment goals by 25% in 2024, and it's worse in 2025. The Brits, the Canadians, the Germans, same story. They lowered standards so far that they're taking people with asthma, flat feet, and BMIs over 40 and still can't fill the ranks. Why? Because young men watched what happened to their fathers and grandfathers who came back from Iraq and Afghanistan missing limbs and treated like villains by the same society that sent them there. They watched recruiting commercials that feature women doing one pull up while lecturing about toxic masculinity. They watched generals grovel about diversity quotas while China builds hypersonic missiles. And they said, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." Instead, those same young men are joining private military companies, making 3 times the money in places like Ukraine or the Middle East with zero woke nonsense, or they're becoming digital nomads, or they're starting trades businesses with their brothers, or they're simply lifting weights, stacking crypto, and living lives of quiet abundance that no drill sergeant can touch. And the birth rate collapse is no longer a future prediction, it's today's headline. In the United States right now, in November 2025, we're looking at a fertility rate that's probably dipped below 1.5 when the final numbers come in. South Korea just announced their rate is 0.72 and falling. Italy is at 1.2. Spain is at 1.19. These aren't countries. These are dying civilizations. And the women who spent their 20s being told you can have kids whenever you want are now finding out at 38 that their AMH levels are in the toilet and the IVF clinic is a $100,000 gamble that usually fails. The frozen egg industry is exploding, but nobody talks about the success rates. Less than 10% of women who freeze their eggs ever end up using them to have a baby because by the time they're ready, they can't find a man willing to raise a child that isn't biologically his with a woman who spent her prime years treating men like disposable income sources. The math never works. I want you to think about the absolute psychological devastation of realizing you were sold the biggest con in human history. Imagine being a 42-year-old woman with a corner office, a Peloton, and a golden retriever waking up one day and understanding with crystal clarity that everything you were told would make you happy has left you miserable, and everything you were told would make you miserable would have made you happy. That the men you called toxic were the ones who would have died for you, that the family you called patriarchal oppression was the only thing that ever gave women real, lasting joy across every culture and every era. That the independence you worshiped is just a fancy word for loneliness. That realization is hitting millions of women right now. And it's only going to get worse as the years roll on. The 2030s are going to be the decade of female regret on a scale we've never seen. We're going to see suicide rates among women over 40 explode. We're going to see an epidemic of alcoholism and pill addiction that dwarfs the opioid crisis. We're going to see women in their 50s and 60s writing books and making documentaries about how feminism lied to them, how they were betrayed by the previous generation of women who sold them a fantasy. And the worst part for them, there will be no sympathy. Men have none left to give. We spend decades listening to women tell us how much they didn't need us, how much better off they were without us, how we were the problem. So when they come crying now, the universal male response is a shrug and it sounds like a you problem. We're not coming to save you. We're not riding in on white horses to fix what you broke. We're building new civilizations elsewhere with women who never broke anything in the first place. This is the ultimate red pill. Men don't need civilization to survive. Men create civilization when the rewards of doing so outweigh the costs. When the costs become infinite and the rewards negative, men revert to the default setting: small tribes, personal loyalty, strength, honor, and peace. Women need civilization because women need the surplus created by male labor to survive at the standard they've become accustomed to. Remove that surplus, remove that labor, remove that protection, and women are left staring at the brutal reality of a world without men's sacrifices. And that world is here. The West is becoming one giant experiment in what happens when you remove male incentive from society. And the early results are exactly what every man who's been paying attention knew they would be: rapid decline, social decay, demographic suicide, and a generation of women who thought they were winning right up until they looked around and realized they were the only ones left in the stadium. So when people ask me if I feel bad for what's happening to Western women, my honest answer is no. Not because I hate them, most of them were just useful idiots who believed the propaganda, but because pity requires respect and respect has to be earned. You don't get to spend decades shitting on men, destroying families, weaponizing the state against fathers, celebrating the worst female impulses, and then expect those same men to come running when the predictable consequences arrive. You made your bed. Now sleep in it. Alone. The men have left the building, and we took the blueprints with us. We're building something new, something better, something that actually works. And entrance is by invitation only. The rest of you can keep the ruins. What did you think about everything we just went through? Do you see this playing out in your own city, your own life right now in 2025? Do you think there's any way back for the West? Or is the die already cast? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and the best ones get pinned. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.